All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to our Friday night conversation. Okay, so obviously, how to start? There's so much uncertainty right now in the world. There's, how do you talk? Should you talk? How do you not sound like an ignorant numbskull? How do you sound sensitive? How do you, when you're triggered and people get reactive to you, what do you do with that? What about when you're reactive? What do you do with that? For me, I've lived, or said a different way, race is so vividly like in my mind and thoughts and my view and the way I look and see. I'm like, oh, there's a person of color. Oh, there's a person of color. I'm like so hyper aware. I'm sure you are too. And it's complicated. And so tonight we have three special guests that I want to, I'm going to bring our first guest in a little while to have a conversation. And then we have two other guests that will be joining us after that to have another conversation. And I don't know how long tonight's video will be. You'll watch for however much you can watch. You can always watch it again later if you choose. Tonight is not a seminar. Tonight may not even be any answers. Tonight may not even be any new openings or ideas. But tonight, I hope, will at least give those of you struggling some thoughts about how to move forward in this moment. Some thoughts about how to shift if that's what you see you need to do. Some thoughts around how to kind of understand a little bit more deeply people who are different and not just, the conversation of the moment is so much around race, of course, but it's also highlighting all of our differences, men and women and, people from different, it's highlighting everything. So this conversation tonight is, I'm very grateful to the people that are going to join us tonight, because it's tricky times for everyone, and especially for our guests tonight, which I'll introduce in a little bit. So we're just going to wait for our first guest to join us. It's 6:03. I asked him to be on at 6:05. So Gary, whenever you're ready, come on and join us into the conversation. And the way that tonight is set up, the way we decided to set tonight up, I've spoken to a lot of graduates this week. I've spoken to many graduates who are protesting out on the streets. I've spoken to many graduates of color. I've spoken to like a real diversity of our community over the course of this week and last week. And the way we've decided to proceed tonight is I essentially am going to interview our guests. So much of what's happening I can't speak to from personal experience. I can understand, I can be curious, I can ask, I can investigate, I can think about it, I can examine my own reaction to what I'm hearing. I can do all those things, but I can't relate in the same way people can't relate to whatever else we're not. And so we decided tonight to have this format be one of kind of interview setup, so that we can actually hear from people who are dealing with their own experiences through this moment, as complicated as it might be. And so let me just get our first guest. I hope he's not having trouble getting in, but we'll give him a second. We'll give him a second to get on. And then at the end of tonight, when we've had the discussions and the conversation that we're going to have, obviously I'll have a few kind of thoughts at the end, because people are asking me as well, and Angel, what the fuck am I supposed to do now? Like, what? I'm lost in a sense. I'm unclear. I don't know, how am I supposed to be right now? So we'll have a little bit of a discussion at the end. So I want to bring in our guest. So Gary, I'm going to bring you in 1 second here. It just takes a second for it to come in. So welcome. And
what's up? How you guys doing?
Okay, let me change you. Hold on. We're not Pam. All right, great. So,
hi, Gary.
Hey, Angel.
So if you don't know Gary is a graduate of, Gary is a graduate of the leadership.
LP55.
LP55. Gary is also a member of law enforcement, and Gary is a family man and a man of many experiences. So when we were discussing about how to proceed, like not just what I want to ask, and to be honest, that's like I'm struggling with what even should I ask, so to speak. There's also like, what might you want to say, Gary? And before we get into the kind of questions, I just want to say it has to be super complicated to be you right now. As a man of color, as a man in law enforcement, you've got so many different sides of what's being portrayed in particular ways inside of you. And I also understand for you and for our other guests tonight, it's, I'm sure, also a little, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, of course, but a little daunting to speak publicly in a moment such as this, so that, because people are taking issue with every fucking thing right now, and getting offended all over the place and getting hurt, and it's reigniting traumas and past. Anyway, it's complicated. So I'm just grateful that you are a yes to, being with us tonight, and hopefully doing a little bit of education for people who are not from the same set of background experiences that you've had. So just welcome, and thank you for being tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess let's just start with kind of by way of a little background, Gary. Why did you choose law enforcement when you did? And what does it look like now as a Black man? Has it always looked the same way? Has it changed over the years? Like, what was your motivation at the beginning, and what's your experience inside of the culture you're in with law enforcement?
All right. Well, that's a great question. I've always kind of been in service. So a little bit about me. I don't know if I shared this through Synergy Journey, but I grew up. I was a Boy Scout. I was an Eagle Scout. I was a altar boy at church. So very diehard and listening to God. And in my community, growing up, I live in the same place that I police at. There's been times as a young Black man, remember getting my driver's license, and my brother and I were just driving from McDonald's, and we got pulled over because the cops said we looked at him too hard. Didn't tell us we did anything right or wrong traffic wise. We just looked at him wrong. I have a license to carry. I had a gun in my car, and sometimes when you have a gun, you have bullets or targets in your car. I got pulled over because I had that in my car. So, I mean, I'm no stranger to racial profiling. But I've also been in the military and seen a lot of racism there. So when I came home, I wanted to serve, and change the culture of discrimination. From within that attracted me. I wanted a diverse department. One that I could change was the one that I grew up in, because people would respect who I was as a young man growing up in this community and now having a badge on. So it is a very, very difficult journey due to the institutional racism. However, helping our community in that a lot of the black youth in our community see me come to a scene, or they see me playing on the basketball court with them. I do a thing called National Night Out, which is done across the country. And we have probably as many people show up to the event when I throw it than as we have people that are within our population. And it's a very tiny population. So that speaks volumes for what I'm trying to accomplish. So it's very rewarding knowing that, I'm there for them. And I think that sometimes people look at it like, hey, he's not just a cop, but he's also a witness on the scene for if something happens. He's there for us. So great question. Thank you. Hopefully I answered it for you.
Yeah, thank you. And how are you dealing with what's happening right now personally?
Personally, to me, this has always been here, this racism.
Yes.
And I know I talked with some of my LP55. We have a chat room. We talked about it today. And to me, it's like, white people, Chinese people, Asian people, welcome to our skin. I mean, you guys are seeing what we live every day. So to me, it's like finally, it's gained some momentum. But I also had some challenges around that, because I wonder how much of the protesting, how much of the anger that people are feeling is also fueled from sitting inside people's houses for the last 16 weeks. And now they just have something to focus on and go toward. Is some of it that, or are people really getting that equality is something that is very important for us to thrive and for us all to feel comfortable?
Right. And I think that's a great question. Like, is the message of what this moment could be getting through? I think that's a good question. Like, what, and then what are we going to do about it?
Right.
I think the what are we going to do about it has some very obvious answers to it. And there's reasons why it's not been done or being done. So, is that message going to get through? I think is challenge. For myself, there's the component of this moment of protesting and standing up and saying "fuck no more," and the outrage and depth of disrespect and despair that is being kind of all pushed out into the streets and into the open and on TV every day. And, is the message of change going to carry us through this moment? Because it's not, for me, obviously, it's not a moment just of emotion. It's not a moment just of, highs and lows. It's also a moment of confronting injustice, and then what are we going to do about it for real? And that's a complicated question. So I want to, the second question I have for you is, I'm going to say obviously, and you can correct me if you feel differently, please. I'm going to say obviously there needs to be change in the law enforcement community culture. What does that look like to you? What are your thoughts about how to fix that, if that's such a thing? Like, how to address that, how to go to work at that? What are your thoughts on that?
So changes will be made. However, they're going to be difficult, and it starts with leadership across the country in the police agencies themselves. We don't know what happened, and a lot of it is our leadership in Washington as well.
Yeah.
I think if we can't fix the White House, how are we going to fix everything else? But in the individual departments themselves, I think that they're supposed to be a mirror of the communities that they serve. And if you look at communities, like the ethnic backgrounds, the racial cultures within those communities, if your police department does not mirror those percentages, something's wrong. Enough people are not applying for those positions to hold people accountable. And I'm not naive enough to think that just by fixing those numbers, it's going to fix it. because there's black people that break the law. There's white people that break the law. There's all colors, but I mean, it's going to help minimize the things that are happening. It's going to help people be more accountable for making sure that everyone has a voice throughout all of this. And there needs to be like a civilian entity that's there for internal investigations. I mean, you're letting the blue curtain is kind of prevailing, and what a blue curtain is it's kind of like, you know, I got your back, and guys lie for each other, and sometimes the truth gets skirted, and guys end up keeping their jobs. No,
Yes.
if you broke the law, I ain't got your back. You out. You're on your own.
Yes.
And that's the way it should be. I mean, especially if it's intentional. We all make mistakes, but I mean, what happened to George Floyd was not a mistake. That was intentional. That was a murder.
And from your point of view, like I don't even know exactly the right word, the level of permission, the level of entitlement, the level of even knowing he was being filmed was like, not, if I'm walking down the street and I thought somebody was, I'd be like nervous, I'd be self-conscious. He was, I don't even understand. And with his, you know, partners, like that is deep. That is deep. So what's your experience about, like, what allows, that's a stupid question, what allows for that, but what are your thoughts about that, perhaps?
That to me is narcissism at its best. And that stuff is supposed to be caught on psychological tests.
Okay.
There's supposed to be checks and balances into how people get hired. And again, I know I'm sticking to the numbers game, but when I went and took, you know, all these police tests, I was the only black person there trying to get into the police department. Yeah. And just like the SATs and a lot of other tests, they're designed so that the end result is a certain person passes these tests. Well, a certain person is supposed to pass to get in the military and get into R&D, research and development. Certain people are supposed to get in the police department based on how they test. So I have a college degree. Those tests were easy for me. But I mean, I think that's a lot of it too.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And all like it's like fucking new news in 2020. Okay. So I have a couple of provocative questions, Gary. Okay. So, and the first question is, what would you have done if you had been one of the 4 officers involved in the incident with George Floyd?
I would have pulled his dumb ass off of him.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be the first time that I intervened, and it won't be the last. That was wrong.
How were you responded to when you stepped in?
I mean, sometimes people get it. Sometimes there's hate. Sometimes, you know, they feel like they don't trust you, and sometimes they alienate you. That's kind of what I've been living my whole life, so it's no different. So I'm going to stand up for the person that needs my protection, whether or not it's another cop, whether or not it's the victim on the street, whether or not it's the guy with the knee in his neck.
And in your opinion and in your experience, how much is that emphasized, instilled, drilled into the culture of where you work? To intervene.
It happened. Do you mean that as far as
intervene.
The use of force issue itself?
Yes, like, because, you know, this is where it's on TV like every other night, and, you know, not related, but the 2 officers in Buffalo that knocked that 75-year-old man to the ground with such force that he was bleeding out of his ears, and then the other police officers just walked on by. Like, how do you intervene in a culture like that? I mean,
a lot of that's the leadership that we talked about. Those departments have fueled that culture. I mean, they allow that to happen. And the unions need to get involved. The unions for these police agencies, as much as they don't want it, they need to be able to stand up and say, hey, we need to look at our punishment. Like, what's going to happen to these officers if we get in trouble? And it needs to clearly be lined out. If you do this, you're getting fired. If you do this, you're getting fired. If you're doing this, it's suspension. And most agencies, they don't have that. So it's just basically, I'm a cop. I ain't got to worry about it. So I mean, a lot of it's just, like I said, it's the arrogance of thinking that now that you have that badge on, you can't be touched. So we got to be accountable. We got to put some policies in place that are going to hold people to that accountability all the time. And it's got to be the same. It's got to be regiment. Because if we can't police our home, who's going to do it for us?
Right, right. And it's no doubt complicated. So, and it's a complicated position for anybody to be in. But you're right. The putting the badge on, that's like, okay, whatever. And yeah, all right. And then I want to ask you a question around race, Gary,
Yes,
which
sir.
is, how do your Black friends view you? How do
My,
they see you right now?
well, my Black friends have always been my Black friends. I mean, and if they stopped being my friends because I became a cop, they were never my friends. So my friends are still there. They check on me. We check on each other. And a lot of this is, what do we got to do to change this together? How can I support you? Because I know now what you're probably going through in the department every day when we're not there to get your back, because we know you're the only one there. So I think it's probably made us a little bit tighter.
Yes. Okay, great. Great. So just a question just came in from Christine. I'd love to know why so much force is needed in policing.
So I'm going to answer that question a different way. Okay. There are different tools that we have in our arsenal to combat different things. Um, the hold that they use on George Floyd, that is allowed and it should be allowed. However, it should only be allowed if the threat that's coming from the subject is deadly. Like if they're ready to kill someone else, if they're ready to kill the cop, then that's authorized to do a chokehold or something like that. Head sting is the same way. You only use those if a gun would also be approved. So if you're in a situation where that guy's going to kill you, yourself, someone from the public, that force is appropriate. But what happened to George Floyd, he wasn't resisting. He was saying, "I can't breathe." That's inappropriate, and that's not trained that way. That's not allowed.
Yes,
But it's only there to to protect life or limb.
got it. Got it. So a lot of the comments that are coming in, Gary, are appreciation of you, proud for you, gratitude for being so real and being so honest and so open in a really difficult moment. Is there anything that you want to add before we complete our conversation?
Yeah, and I appreciate that love, but that love is only there because of Angel and Peter. The work that they've done, the environment that you guys give us to be ourselves, to be open, and to speak and talk about realness, knowing that even though I'm being vulnerable and talking about this, the people that are on the screen, I already know they have synergy. I already know that this conversation is in confidence, and I don't have to worry about that or being judged. So my hat's off to both of you for creating that environment for us all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And we're proud of you. We want you to be safe, please, and take care of yourself.
Thank you.
And really grateful for you sharing with our community, most of whom probably I don't have a depth of experience of what it would be like to be in law enforcement. And it's easy to go with the outrage of the bad apples, so to speak.
Right.
It's a bigger conversation than that. And so, ultimately for me, this heads towards, the what's next conversation then. So therefore, now what? So just thank you for who you are, and thank you for, bringing all of yourself tonight and being so open with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you, Gary.
all right. We love you.
Love you guys.
We love you. Take care of yourself. Okay, so while we wait for our other guests to join us, that's courage right there. That's authenticity right there. That's generosity right there, and openness. And I want to say how, I don't want to bombard Gary with, comments or emails or notes or whatever, but I just want you to know, Gary, how much as a collective people appreciate who you were and sending love to you. So thank you.
And I just want to say something. I know I've been quiet mostly, and that was by design tonight, because there's going to be a lot of voices on here tonight, and let Peter guide most of the conversation. But I thought it to be important to be here tonight. And I personally worked with Gary. I was his leadership coordinator. And I just want to say what you heard from Gary tonight is indicative of the leadership he showed, not just during 3 months, but in his life. And he always brought himself above the line in that way. So it's not just because of the intensity in the moment. Gary, I want to say who you are. The expression you taught us, that you've got our six. We have to learn how to have everybody's back, or six, during this time, and not be reactive, but really exert the leadership that you're exemplifying. So thank you.
Okay, and so let me just make sure. Let me make sure our other guests are joining. So give me just a second, everybody, because sometimes the Be Live technology, which is what allows us to have, great, here they are. Okay, great. Okay, so give me, okay, hold on. They can't hear you. Give me 1 second. Nobody can hear you, so there we go.
Can you hear us?
Now we can hear you, okay?
Why can't we hear you?
Why can't we hear you?
We're having issue. Hold
It
on.
has to be a two-way street. We got to hear them too.
Okay, why can't we hear you?
Should I go on Facebook?
No, I'm sorry, guys. Just give us a second to try to figure out why
Sure.
we can't hear you.
Oh, Charles, his name is cut off. Okay, so hold on.
You're there. I can't hear. We can't hear you yet.
You can hear me, okay? Oh. Okay, dropped off. Let's see. So we'll just give him 1 more second.
And just a word, folks, just about the technical. If there's some people that want access to this video, it's not live, but it'll also be on our YouTube channel for Synergy Education. So please do look for it. It's on Facebook. Those that are not on Facebook, it will be on the YouTube channel tonight.
Okay, so now, okay, they're there, and then now their video's not coming in. Shit.
Okay.
Is it going to come in now? Sally, are you able to hear us or no? Sally, can you hear me or no? Okay. Gosh, I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know if their internet is not fast enough to be on video. I really don't know. And we had some good questions lined up for Sally and Charles. So what should we do?
Oh, okay.
Their second and third guests. Yes.
Got it.
So do you think that we should...
Well, let's take some questions from the people. Oh, wait, they're coming in.
Hold on 1 second, Sally. Give me 1 second, please.
Hear you now.
Okay, now we see you. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. I don't know what was wrong with my phone. Anyway, we're in the car, guys.
Okay, we see you in the car. All right. So, listen, then I want to get right to it, Sally, because I don't know if we might lose you or something.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I want to jump straight into my questions with you. The question I want to start with is less of a personal question that I was asking Gary. Gary's questions were directed quite toward him. How do you, this is a very large general question, how do you think we've failed as a society? So there's great stuff, and then there's what we're seeing is happening revealed now. So how do you think we failed as a society from your point of view?
I think, like, okay, let's just say this. These issues have been going on for a really long time, right? And we've sort of not been paying attention, or we've not been listening and being in action as far as fixing them. After the civil rights movement, everything was, we had our leaders killed, and people were sort of coasting, right? They were sort of coasting and everything's great, and now the world is better, and it wasn't. And what you're seeing now, and also, man, there's so many ways. Images. I remember being in my teens and seeing images of Black people, always the crimes. We were the ones committing the crimes. Negative images. And we've had to deal with those images. We've had to deal with the side comments and not be able to say anything. So I think we failed as a society because we've sort of been coasting for a really long time. And now, here we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Charles able? I don't want to distract him from driving.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I just want to add something. If I could just add something to what Sally said. And the answer to that question was most exemplified during my trip, of all places, to Berlin. When I was in Berlin, there were countless monuments to people that have lost their lives in the Jewish Holocaust, not just Jews, homosexuals, people of color, people with disabilities. It's like the people of Berlin specifically, they've come to terms, they've examined and come to terms with their ugly past, for which I applaud them. America, on the other hand, to answer your question of where we have failed, our society has failed because we don't want to come to terms with our past. We don't want to come to terms with our ugly past. And we want to do it, if we do it, when we're forced to do it, we want to do it selectively. For instance, there are many people who are fans of the Confederate times who want to have their Confederate soldiers memorialized. They want their statues to be up. This is a part of our history. It's an unavoidable part of our history. Yes, but so is slavery. So they want to memorialize their Confederate heroes, but they don't want to come to terms with the fact that the reason you are in a position right now of superiority is because of centuries of free labor and Jim Crow. That's the part of history that they want to selectively address and actually leave out. Right. So that to me is the crux of America's failure to deal with this issue. And to quote Malcolm X, these instances of uprisings or riots or whatever you want to call them, these are really America's chickens coming home to roost.
Right.
So that's my short answer to that.
Yeah. Okay, great. And there, also I feel like there's not a value of everyone gets to go in this country. Right. There's not a value of, and I'm generalizing, of course, there's not a foundation of fairness, that fairness is not a central tenet. It's like everyone for themselves. and that's glorified. So any community that is disparaged or marginalized, it's like, if you're in the ruling class, so to speak, well, too bad for you. I'm good. So, and the value of that has always stood out to me, having lived in the US for like 25 years now, coming from, and I'm not glorifying Canada. Canada's got its own problems too, but even things like healthcare, the environment, all the stuff that the welfare, the social network of support, it's just not valued. It's like something that's got to be fought for year after fucking year, and so many other things win out. So, okay.
And it's our priorities have been in the wrong place. You can't, you can't move on as a community if you don't deal with the underlying. You can't build a beautiful house and have a shitty foundation.
Correct.
It's no matter how pretty that house is, that foundation is bad, and eventually the house will start to fall. And that's what it is. So our priorities have always been in the wrong place.
Yes.
And and I gotta say, as a Black person, I feel the same way about our priorities. I can take some responsibility in the sense that, our focus and I've had this conversation. We've been focused on wealth. We've been focused on our own. We've been focused on getting a house, a car, and red bottoms, whatever it is. And we need to be focused on our communities.
Yes.
We need to be focused in going back. It's great for me if I do okay, but if my brother's not okay, then I'm not okay. And so as a community, as a country, we talk a really good game, but we don't take care of business. So hopefully this is America's wake-up call.
Well, yes, hopefully so. And so my second question, Sally, has to do with transformation, because part of my personal motivation always around, everybody watching this did the red and black game probably. And the wrap to that conversation is, how are you looking out at life? Through a lens of win-win? I mean, probably in some places, but how about those places you're looking win-lose or lose-lose?
Right.
And that's like, part of that is my driver, because until people have a visceral connection that actually fucking matters, it's not an intellectual shift. It's not an intellectual, it's an emotional, a visceral, a foundational shift of values that is central to live. So how do you connect transformation, what's happening at the moment, what you guys already shared, society, how do you connect all that?
I think that, especially in this work, and what you brought up was the red and black game, I think that we have to begin to create win-win situations. And we have to recognize and be really honest about the fact that it's been win-lose in the society for African Americans. And I'm really focused on African Americans, because we, Black folks, Black and brown folks, because we need the attention right now. It's not all lives matter right now. It's like all lives don't matter till Black lives matter. So we need to get really focused on healing. We need to get really focused and be about an agenda that supports the people of color in this country. We need to be, that needs to be like, okay, after I brush my teeth, how do I support the people of color in this country? Because if that doesn't happen, this is going to be not very good for America, no matter if you're Black or white. So to create a win-win, recognize that you've been creating a win-lose situation. Because if you weren't, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I'm not saying you, I'm saying anybody.
Yeah.
And get to work on making sure it's a win-win situation.
Yes.
Keep busy.
And I was talking to somebody this afternoon, a woman of color in our community who's a leader, and she was her advice to all of us is to get bigger and get busy, because it's not just, it's a conversation of race, it's a conversation of gender, it's a conversation of the environment, it's a conversation of economics, education, it's a conversation of everything.
Right.
And if your foundational driver is something over here, we need that too. We need everybody like going at a 10 to make a difference all around. That's the transformation, I think.
And that in this community, in Synergy, we have the tools to do so. I don't think there's anybody who's, now this is when it's really needed. I think we got a bad connection, but this is when it's really needed.
Right. Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Charles, anything you want to add there?
I know we're in our Wi-Fi. Can you hear me? Or something? Hold on, we're like frozen for a second. You're frozen in a very beautiful position, Peter. Your hands are open.
We can hear you fine. We can hear you fine.
You can hear us? Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Too. Okay.
And then it freezes. Okay.
Okay, got
All
you.
right, now
Got you back.
Okay. So I've got one more question, but does Charles want to add anything to the last one? Otherwise, I'll move to the third question.
Yeah, I do want to add something, if I might be permitted to just say, I want to say to our Synergy community what I say to Sally before we start couples therapy. No matter what I'm gonna say right now, I love you all very much, but I have to be my contract now. Okay, I have to be open and vulnerable right now, but responsible too. And saying this in answer to your question about this question of like how we move forward, what we can do. And I always have to go back to my own history as a Black American. And Sally and I were talking about this earlier today and stating that, you know, if you look at it historically, if you look at a time where Black Americans were the most empowered and they affected the most change, it actually was not the civil rights movement. It actually was not. The time when Black people were the most self-actualized and the time when they affected the most change, two instances in one era, one instance. That era was the era of the Harlem Renaissance. And there were artists, writers, painters, dramatic artists, visual artists, all of this great Black American brilliance took place in one era, because this is a time where Black Americans, Black people looked out for each other, took care of each other. We didn't depend on anyone else to do it for us. We didn't depend on anyone's approval. We didn't depend on anyone's liberalism. We did it all on our own. So that era, we have to have that. There's some semblance of that era that has to be returned. And I want to talk about a historical instance. One of the few times where Black Americans affected the most change historically was the Montgomery bus boycott. Here it is again, that element of the Harlem Renaissance where Black people took care of themselves. They weren't interested or dependent upon anyone else taking care of them. And what did they do? The white people said, "You niggers can't take the bus with us. You got to sit in the back." Black people said, "We don't." Well, you niggers can't take the bus. So he's like, "Fine, we won't take the bus." So what did they do? They organized the whole transportation system on their own. And because of that cohesiveness and because of that mentality of not worrying about whatever people felt or thought, they brought Montgomery, Alabama to its knees. And financially, they had no choice but to allow Black people to take the bus and sit wherever the hell. And I'll never forget, and this is the funny part, one of my biggest heroes, James Baldwin, wrote about the aftermath of that incident and how he said he wrote white people walking around like some kind of wounded lovers or something. that the black people were able to take the bus. My point is this. The way we move forward, in my judgment, and I'm saying this out of love for the synergy community, that black people, we, in my judgment and based on my experience and based on my own history, we can't depend on white people to do this for us. This is something we have to do for ourselves. And as long as there are avenues like synergy education that will bring us to a higher level to let us know that we do matter, until that happens within our own community, we cannot depend on white people to rescue us. We have to participate in our own rescue. We can't depend on white people to do that. So, having said that, I want to say that I think there are two different issues here. What can we do, and what can everyone else do? That's what we have to do. What everyone else can do, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. So, I really don't have an answer for that.
And this is interesting because he's right, and he's right, but if this moves the way we think it's going to move, people have to be prepared to hear an argument like that, and an argument, and stay with, and keep moving, and keep trying to create win-win situations. No matter, because black folks are angry and they're upset, they haven't been heard. They're like, I don't want to deal with white people. I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't want to do that. So people are going to have to get, and I said this before, get very comfortable being uncomfortable right now, and not give up.
So then, Sally, now you're going to hate my last question, given what you just said.
Oh, Lord. What is it?
But I prepared it, and I want to know, what's your advice right now for white people?
Wow. What's our advice?
Can I say something? Having said everything I just said, and I truly believe that, and I have a lot of conviction around what I just said. But here's the answer to your question, and my answer comes from a person from our own synergy community, and I mentioned this. What I think part of what white people can do in this situation is to do what Daniel Bernardo so courageously did. He wrote on his Facebook page, he said, listen, if you classify, I love the way he put it, if you classify as someone as white and you want to have a discussion about what's going on in the world, inbox me or let's have a discussion about it. That's what white people can do. Talk amongst yourselves. Get yourselves, enroll yourselves to get comfortable being uncomfortable if you really want to affect some change. If you really want to be an ally.
Great.
Amongst yourselves. Do what Daniel did. He put it out there. And let me tell you something. Daniel took a lot of heat for that. He took a lot of heat for being courageous that way. And so to me, when you see something going on that's not right, surrender a little bit of your white privilege. And I know that's a big thing. That's a big thing, that if you really want to affect some change, to me, that action that Daniel took, he's like, dude, I'm ready to surrender some white privilege because I'm looking at the whole picture. And that's a courageous thing to do. I love him for doing that.
So,
thank you.
So be prepared. It's like when you ask that question, there's so many things to be addressed here. It's just not one conversation, but have those conversations when you're in. Look at your Facebook posts. Like, are you posting stuff that support transformation, that support forwarding the conversation, that even support being like Leanne, we was talking, getting uncomfortable? Because when you post something on your Facebook page, or when you're around your friends and someone says something off color, do you ignore it? Have you ignored it? And now it's time for you to kind of say to that friend, what do you mean by that?
Right.
So I can't be where you can be. We can't go where you can go. But you can be a representative for change wherever you go. And you can rest your head on your pillow at night knowing that I don't care. It's interesting because in this community, we're all, we all deal with that, but you got family. You got uncles and aunts, the grandmother who may need to hear. You know, like this little 8-year-old girl was telling her white girl was telling her father about racism. You guys have a responsibility to call it out when you see it. You can't be my friend or Charles's friend and not do it. It's not good. It's not funny. It's not
authentic.
It's not authentic. So you can't and when you don't do it, then you're not really being a friend, and you're not being a friend to the cause, and you're not being a friend. You're not stand for transformation and all the rest of that stuff. So yeah, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's going to be a long road, I think.
Yeah. And I think as this week has gone on, this long week has gone on, there's been a journey of there's nothing to say. Like, what can I say? There's a journey of, okay, I said something and I got jumped all over because of the thing that I said. And then there's and I love what you're saying. Too bad. We talk about it at Synergy, get messy. So
yeah.
don't
be messy.
Get in there.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. All right, can you hear me?
It's gonna be messy. It's gonna be messy, and just get messy.
Okay, exactly. And that's where we also get to be with each other and on each other's side, and point stuff out if that's what needs to happen, but to love each other at the same time. All right.
Yeah, I caught some of what you were saying. The love part I got, because that's really important. We still love everybody, but we just this is what it is.
Get messy. Yeah. Get courageous. Get messy.
Exactly. All right, you guys. Well, we'll let you go, glamorous people driving around.
We've been driving around to have this conversation.
All right.
We're still dealing with food. We had to go food shopping. We're still dealing with Corona, so we had to go with food before everything.
Right.
Right.
Corona. What? Yeah.
Corona's gone. Corona's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. This is America's too crazy right now.
Too crazy, right? Well, we love you. There's, you'll read the commentary later. People are grateful for both of your perspectives.
Cool.
Clearly, this little bit of time is the scratch of a conversation that could be hours and days and weeks and years long.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say to people, let me just say this.
Yeah.
If you want to get involved, there are organizations like Obama.org has a whole bunch as far as changing, how do you say it, Gary, know better, how police deal with, how they're reprimanded for stuff like that. There's something called Something 8, where mayors actually have the authority to deal and change the way police. So if you go, I think Obama.org has it. Bill de Blasio signed up for this, but they're trying to get all the mayors all across the country to do this. So maybe we could create something in Synergy around one of these organizations to move the agenda forward, to change the way people are dealing with stuff right now. But there's things you can do. There's things you can do.
Including protesting. So if you're so inclined to call and stand out and add your voice to that voice, then 100%. All right, you guys. We love you, and thank you so much.
We love you guys.
Love you.
We're grateful for this community, and we love this community. Thank you, guys.
We're grateful for you too, and we love you too. All right, be safe.
Okay.
Take care. So it's so clear to me. We could spend, we could spend a lifetime having a conversation around what can bring us together and what we're facing and challenged with. And I just want to complete by something that was said tonight in the discussion, and something that was said to me this week. It's that this moment is a moment that could change forever the world that we're living in. It's a moment of that level of gravity and rawness and upset, and people are fucked up, and a lifetime of having to manage oneself or hide stuff is all being poured out and torn out into the open. So I just want to say, wherever you are tonight, wherever you consider yourself in the midst of what's happening in the world this week, at a minimum, I want to say, have courage. Have the courage of your conviction to go and stand for something, to get busy with something, to add your voice somewhere. If it's, we're all going to take heat. I'm taking heat this week. We're all going to take heat. So, but are you going to stop with that? Or are you going to get bigger and add your voice to something? This is a moment of choosing passion and choosing commitment and choosing to make a difference, choosing contribution. Okay, so this is a moment like that, and I intend to keep doing the work that I'm doing. Angel intends to keep doing the work he's doing. We've, even though we're not in the training rooms since COVID started, we are working harder and been busier than we've ever been, figuring out how to continue the work of transformation in the world such as it is right now. And I know that that may not solve everything, and I know that that may not be the answer just to this moment, but it brings a different point of view and a connection and an openness that we all get to share. So be safe. We love you. Let's start dialogues. Let's get messy. Let's get courageous. Let's get bigger. Let's do all that stuff. All right. So everybody, thank you for watching tonight, being part of the conversation. This is just a beginning. There's so much to talk about, and there's so much action to take. So love you, everybody. Thank you for being a part of our community and our lives. And let's stand together and fucking change this world right now, because that's where we're at. So have a great night, everybody. Okay.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.